Hi, my name is David, but you can call me Skiff, and welcome back to Notflix, a show about other shows. Today we are discussing Netflix's original series, Insatiable Season 1, Episode 2, titled Skinny is Magic. If you haven't watched the episode, stop right now, go do that first, because I'm warning you there will be spoilers. But if you have watched the episode, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So last we saw our two anti-heroes, Patty and Bob. Patty was alone with John, the homeless guy, in the motel room, and she had just doused him in vodka and decided not to set him on fire, which, great. That is wonderful. And Bob was alone in his car after just being seduced by Magnolia, and they had decided to work together. Or I guess Patty had just decided to tell Bob that she was agreeing to become his beauty pageant contestant, queen, whatever you want to call it. I'm not in that world, so I don't really get it. But she's on board to do what he wants her to do. So flash forward to this week's episode, and, well, to episode 2, really. And it's the first day of senior year. Patty is hungover because she spent the whole night drinking. And she is dreading having to go back to school. And what happens next is what usually happens in all teen movies or teen TV shows is how do you get rid of the parents? Because the children can't really do, or the teenagers can't really do what we need them to do with the parents around. So the way they got rid of the mom in this episode was to send her off to an AA retreat for 4 days in Atlanta. And now Patty can do whatever she wants. And she decides, okay, it's the first day of school, I'm hungover, I don't want to go back because I've been bullied my entire life and I don't want to deal with these people, I'm going to skip. So I'm going to go see Bob. Bob, when we first see him in this episode, is at home with his wife, Alyssa Milano. He's putting on a girdle, which I thought was very interesting. And she has decided that he is not allowed to coach anyone under the age of 18, and he needs to drop it. He tells her about Magnolia trying to seduce him. He was like, I didn't know, I thought she wanted me to just be her coach, considering that Magnolia is dating her son, Brick. And she was like, it doesn't matter, you're not coaching Magnolia, you're not coaching that blonde girl Patty, she's trouble, there's something wrong with her, and you're going to set your sights on someone over the age of 18, which, you know what, regardless of whether or not he had molested his other contestant, which we all know isn't true, it's probably best for him at the moment, for his reputation, to stay away from people under the age of 18. Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in. We jump to guilty until proven innocent. It's not right, but you know, once your reputation is tarnished, your reputation is tarnished, and it's sort of like you have to build your way back up. Anyway, so flash a little bit forward, Patty comes to his office and is like, look, I'm not going to school, let's just start coaching right now. And he's like, you have to face your fears. And he shows her that he too, in his adolescence, was overweight and was bullied for it. And he was like, but eventually, he was like, I was fat until I wasn't. And he says, skinny is magic, which we'll put that in quotation marks for now, skinny is magic. And he's like, you're no longer fatty Patty. You are a different person. You can now create the narrative that you want to create. And wouldn't that be great for all of us if we could just go back to high school for one more day and just recreate our narrative and be a different person and make people see us the way that we see ourselves? Life would be so much easier that way, right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe those experiences that we've had up through our entire adolescence have shaped us into the person that we are today. Maybe those experiences made us the stronger adult that we are today. Maybe those experiences didn't do anything for you because you had a grand old time throughout your adolescence. Who knows? But those experiences are your experiences, and I don't personally believe that you can change your narrative at any stage of life, really, just by changing your appearance. Because at the end of the day, you are still going to be the same person on the inside. It doesn't matter what's reflected on the outside. If the inside doesn't change with you as well, and if the inside doesn't grow with you as you change as a person and perhaps your exterior does decide to catch up with your interior, you're always going to feel the same. It's sort of like with those weight loss television shows like The Biggest Loser. A lot of those contestants throughout the years, if I'm not incorrect, I mean, I stand to be corrected. If you know, please leave me a comment down below, or if you know that I'm wrong, please let me know. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of those contestants that went on to The Biggest Loser, who lost a lot of the weight, would then leave the show and then gain all the weight back. It's sort of like when you have gastric bypass. If you don't change your eating habits, once you've lost all the weight, because inevitably you're going to, especially with gastric bypass, they staple your stomachs in half, which I don't necessarily think is the safest thing to do. But if you don't change your eating habits, once you've lost all the weight, you're going to gain it all back because your stomach stretches. And it's sort of like you have to pair that with some sort of therapy, talk therapy, to continue to grow as a person. And because, back to our show, what we were talking about before, Patty hasn't done that, and she lost the weight so quickly in a period of 3 months, she's sort of still the same person on the inside. But through Bob's recommendation, she does agree to go to school after he gives her a makeover, and she's seeing the school through a new lens, which of course is going to happen because, again, they're teenagers, and superficiality is extremely important, and the way you look is very important in high school. Whatever. So people are seeing her that didn't used to see her. Now, when I say see her, I mean they're actually noticing her. Whereas before she was able to sort of blend into the background, save for also being bullied here and there for the way that she looked by the stoners in school who dubbed her Fatty Patty, by the band, the marching band, there we go, giving her theme music as she walks and trips, which is... Teenagers can be really rude and really crude, and if you're gonna take anything from this, I think it's a way at least to learn from the bullying of fictitious characters, to realize that what is happening to this character, Patty, can be harmful for someone for a very long period of time. Anyway, so she's at school and she's seeing the school through a new lens, through this new lens of Patty, who everyone thinks is a new girl because she looks so drastically different than what she used to. And she approaches Brick and wants to sort of start something with him. She decides, well, wouldn't it be great if the former fat chick can seduce the most popular guy in school and reject him just like he did me? Because let's be honest, wouldn't we all want to do that? Isn't there that one person in your life that you wish you could come upon and look so much better than you did before and be able to reject them? That's the dream, right? We don't always get that opportunity because we don't all get this extreme of a makeover in our lives. But it is the dream, and she is going to live it, or so she thinks, because Magnolia sweeps right in and is like, look, just because you're skinny now doesn't mean you can take someone else's boyfriend, which, in fact, is true. Just because you're skinny now doesn't give you the right to be a bitch. Plainly stating. Might be a little bit harsh, but it is the truth. Now, there's sort of two storylines going on here in this episode. There's a storyline with Patty and Bob, that is our A storyline, and then there's the B storyline, I'm gonna say, which is Alyssa Milano, Christopher Gorham, and Arden. I don't know her last name right now. I think it's Arden Marie. I will double check that, and I will insert her name right here. And that's sort of like the B storyline. The B storyline being this whole Arden Marie's character setting up Bob and having him followed and taking those pictures of him with Magnolia and Alyssa Milano, you know, fighting for her husband. We will eventually get to that, and I think that, yes, it can be important, yes, it's an important plot point, but it's not the main plot point of this episode. So what happens at school is that Patty finds out that there is a man who was in a fire at the motel that she was at the previous night, who is in critical condition and in the hospital. So she runs out of class with her best friend and is like, explains to her everything that happened. And her best friend, who happens to be the daughter of the sheriff of the town, is like, look, I'm gonna go to the hospital, I'm gonna figure out who the guy is, because my dad always says you can catch a killer by checking to see who checks in to the visitor's log at the hospital. So she goes, she finds out that it is him, and she texts Patty and is like, you're going to need a lawyer. Basically, like, lawyer up, which probably, like, if you're a good friend and you're that aware of the goings on of what a police investigation involves, you probably shouldn't be texting your friend this, but I'm not giving anyone advice on how to get out of trouble. While all of this is happening, Patty is in lunch, which can be, I think, the scariest moment for any teenager in school, or at least in high school, which is like, where do you sit? Who do you sit with at lunch? Because now that she is visible to all her classmates, and she can sort of create this new narrative for herself, she wants to figure out, where does she fit in? Who does she fit in with? What group is she going to be a part of? What clique is she a part of now? And she gets invited to sit with the popular girls, which she decides very quickly that she is not capable of being a part of them. And she decides to sit alone and is approached by Christopher, I think his name, or Christian. It's one of the two, who is a new boy in school, who is, you know, different enough from Brick, where we could consider Brick the typical high school jock, and we could consider Christian the typical outsider student, where he's like alternative and he has long hair and, like, you know, he's just the complete opposite of Brick. That being said, he's probably not that alternative. He says that he's the son of a pastor. Yes, his name is Christian because he says it's also his religion. There we go. We got there. But she's like, wow, he thinks I'm hot. Maybe I am hot. Maybe I can create this new narrative for myself. Maybe I can see myself in a new light, which I think is wonderful. Again, and I think that it's great that she wants to create this whole new narrative for herself, but it's so easy for us to forget, like, where we came from once our luck has started to change. And it's sort of like within these storylines is the hubris of these characters, where so often that is what is going to bring them down, is the thought that they can actually just change who they are. And we're already seeing that within this episode, that she's sort of struggling with this idea of creating a new narrative, because she has this looming idea in the back of her mind, and this, like, monkey on her back, where she thinks that she may have killed somebody. She may have set somebody on fire because she can't remember. So she calls Bob and she tells him the whole storyline, and he's like, look, you need to figure out what happened last night. Stay away from the motel, but figure out what you were doing. So she goes back to her house with Nani, her best friend, and they're trying to recreate the goings-on of what happened in the evening before. Now, I don't know whether Patty is ignorant to Nani's coming on to her, or if she's choosing to ignore it, but Nani is coming on to her so strong. Like, there is no subtlety in her attraction and her love for her best friend, that it is insane to me that it hasn't been addressed yet, save for a comment by Nani calling, They find a clue as to where she might have been the night prior because Nani finds a bag of Cheetos. And the booze and stuff from the first episode is next door to the motel. So they figure that out, and Patty's like, oh my God, you should be a detective just like your father. And Nani says, oh, that's too dykey, you know. Not the greatest choice of words, but it is an opinion. We'll just leave it at that. Now we're going on a little bit long here, so I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this, just to get through it quickly, because I don't want to bore you guys too much. And they eventually find out that Patty did go to the booze and stuff the night before, and she flashed Donald, the attendant, who lied for her on the stand in the previous episode, which again, like, what is going on in this town? Who do these teenagers think they are? That they could just be lying on the stand? I mean, what is this, Pretty Little Liars? Anyway, that was a bad joke, sorry.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
And she flashes him because he says, you still owe me for lying. So she shows her boobs, and he remarks that he thought it was so interesting that he remarks on the fact that she wasn't wearing a bra, which they then find out was left in the motel room. So they try to steal the bra back, and Bob is like, look, you can't steal evidence because it's all logged in, so if you steal something, they're going to notice something different. And now this is, I thought, was my favorite part of the episode. It may not be that interesting or integral to the plot line, but I thought that it was so clever the way that they handled the FaceTime call. Because the way that we communicate with each other in this digital age has changed so drastically within the past 5 years alone, where texting is tantamount to having a conversation with somebody. Yes, but 10 years ago it wasn't. So when it did become very important in the zeitgeist, it was sort of a way to how do you incorporate that into media? And a lot of people sort of have the text bars show up onto the screen with the conversation so we can follow along, and it's never really done that well. Every once in a while, you know, you can be surprised and someone does come up with a new idea, but it's sort of like, how do you show that conversation in a creative and interesting way? It's sort of like, just throw the text up onto the screen, and like, that's how we can get a conversation, because people don't really pick up the phone and talk to each other anymore, because that's not most people, most homes at least, don't have landlines anymore. So the FaceTime call, which is another way people are starting to communicate, I thought the way that they handled it was so clever and so interesting. And if you're a filmmaker or you're interested in film or TV or anything like that, take note, because they are actually doing some really interesting stuff on this show. And I haven't seen a FaceTime call done this well before. So it was done really well, and I just wanted to point that out and put that out there, and I was very impressed by that. Not that I guess I should be, because it's just a FaceTime phone call, but like, it was cool. Anyway, moving right along. Well, I guess we can jump forward and say we come to the realization eventually. They try to recreate what happened the night before by Patty getting drunk again and trying to figure out like how long it took her to get from the motel to the booze and stuff, because by the timestamp of the security camera from the booze and stuff, it was 10 minutes after the alarm went off at the motel that she happened upon the booze and stuff. So they're like, okay, well, let's recreate the events that happened last night, and then we can see how long it took you to get from here to there, from point A to point B, which, you know, as an idea, it would be very good. I think to sort of like recreate the entire sequence of events from the night before. In execution, obviously not going to be that great because it lands Patty in the hospital having to get her stomach pumped, where lo and behold, John, the homeless guy, is at because he's being treated. Now, Bob comes in and MacGyver's, that's not even the right character. It's Columbo. Or like Sherlock Holmes is the whole case and figures out that John set the fire himself by accident, by waking up drunk in the motel room by himself, disabling the smoke alarm, putting the battery in his pocket, lighting a cigarette, throwing the match down onto the bed, which catches the whole bed that has been soaked in vodka, which I don't know that you can set vodka on fire. Let me know in the comments section down below. I'm pretty sure that you cannot set vodka on fire. I may be wrong. Who knows? And then running into the bathroom and hitting his head on the door jamb, knocking him unconscious and leaving him in the motel room, which he then admits to. Very clever. I can't believe that he figured it out, because he seems like this sort of like goofy lawyer, not this like very well put together. I mean, compared to his counterpart, which is played by Christopher Gorham, he doesn't seem as well put together. Not to say that he couldn't have figured it out. It's just like surprising that he was able to figure it out, and it's like, good for you. Now, as they're leaving the hospital, Patty's like, I still don't have my revenge, so I want to talk to this guy. And she goes up to him and she's like, look, I was the fat girl that you punched in the face. You broke my jaw, and I deserve an apology. And he says to her, well, you should be thanking me because you're no longer fat anymore. And she says to him, no one should be treated like that, which is right. And she says, just because I'm no longer fat, that doesn't mean I can let go of that girl inside of me, which I think is so great of her to realize that, like, after all of this, throughout this entire journey that you've had of like becoming this new person, because she isn't a new person, that you can't let that person go. But then she screams at him, he has a heart attack and actually dies, and she thinks to herself, well, maybe skinny is magic. Maybe I can be a new person. And this is why I call her an anti-hero, and this is why I call Bob an anti-hero, because they are not your typical good guys of a show. They both have their own best interests at heart, where Bob wants to salvage his reputation and Patty wants to get revenge at everyone that has made fun of her for her entire life. And these aren't generally the greatest ideals to be having as a character, just like as a person's character, where you want to take revenge on people. It says a lot about you, I think, as a person, if you want to be using your newfound confidence to take revenge on people. And if you, as an adult, want to take advantage of a young, impressionable child to save your own reputation, that is why I consider them anti-heroes. Now, with our B storyline, Alyssa Milano, who's in love with Christopher Gorham, why I'm saying the actors' names and not the characters' names is because I can't remember the characters' names for the life of me, and so I'll just refer to them for the rest of this time as Christopher Gorham, Alyssa Milano, and Arden Marie. Again, still can't remember if that's her name. Alyssa Milano gets these pictures that Arden Marie leaves for Christopher Gorham and sort of like entraps her, which I thought was also very genius, by getting her to text them to her and then saying, you have solicited child pornography by sending these through a text message to me, and if you say anything to anyone, I will go to the cops. Now, come to find out, Arden Marie doesn't seem to care. She's like, do whatever you want to do, I don't care. come to find out that she's having this sort of secret relationship with Brick, who earlier on in the episode is having this conversation with Magnolia, and he's like, no, I'm not talking to other girls, which made me think, oh, he must be gay. But no, he's not talking to other girls, because he's talking to other women. There is a lot of adult on teenager sex going on, which just blows my mind, because I don't know if this is something that's happening out there in the real world or if this is just something that's happening in the fantasy world. And I guess it is just like an interesting plot point to have in there. Is it? I don't know. It's kind of tricky because we have this character, Bob, who's being accused of molesting a child, and the person accusing him of molesting a child is actually molesting a child. Things are happening. But I guess we'll have to wait until next episode to see what happens and what's going to happen with these characters, because we are at the end. After everything has been said and done, I am still so much enjoying this show. I think it is very refreshing to have in our lead characters anti-heroes as opposed to your typical hero that you would want to root for. These are characters that you don't necessarily want to root for and probably shouldn't be rooting for because they're terrible people. That being said, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Notflix. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you can get notified every single time we upload a new video. If you want to keep up with me on a more regular basis, you can follow me across all social media platforms that you can call me Skiff. If you want to be a friend, tell a friend. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.